I love foie gras far too much to care about the animals.
In terms of production methods and animal welfare, maybe we need to change some things.
Whatever methods are used to make foie gras is essentially making the animal ill.
We don't want a snowball effect and end up with restrictions on foie gras, salmon, and lots of other products.
Welcome to France in Focus. In this edition, we're talking about the French delicacy of foie gras. It translates as fat liver, and it's one of the most cherished foods here in France. It's also a staple at Christmas tables across the country and for sale at Christmas markets like this. But it's also a source of controversy. There are ethical concerns about how it's produced, and it's led several French cities to ban it from official gatherings. The move has launched a fierce national debate.
A delicacy to some, but cruel to others. The mayor of Strasbourg has banned foie gras from the city's official functions due to animal welfare concerns.
It won't have an economic impact on the sector because it's a low volume of foie gras. We adopted a set of ecological criteria at the town hall.
Strasbourg is just the latest local authority to shun the traditional dish, following in the footsteps of the city of Lyon and other eco-conscious administrations. Foie gras has become something of a hot potato. As to create the characteristic fattiness of the liver, farmers force a pipe down the birds' throats up to 3 times a day, pumping a rich, fatty mixture into their stomachs. A technique animal rights experts say is cruel, though the practice remains legal in France. This is a foie gras farm in the east of the country. Alsace is one of the 3 regions in France that create the prized product, and the producer here is incensed by the mayor's decision.
It's clearly a line that's been crossed. We don't want a snowball effect and end up with restrictions on foie gras, salmon, and lots of other products.
Throughout French history, foie gras was typically eaten during the end-of-year festive season. The earliest traces of it date back to antiquity. It first appeared in France during the Middle Ages and in the 18th century became a feature at the Palace of Versailles. According to a recent survey, more than 3/4 of French people say they don't have an issue with eating foie gras over Christmas and New Year.
It's very good, it's delicious. But in terms of production methods and animal welfare, it's true that maybe we need to change some things and eat far less.
I love foie gras far too much to care about the animals. But discussions around animal welfare, the environment and veganism have become more and more common, and foie gras production methods have become increasingly divisive in recent years, to the point of becoming worth a mention during the French presidential election campaign.
Foie gras is a luxury product that is usually eaten around Christmas. 80% of foie gras consumption happens at this time. I eat foie gras, but artisanal foie gras. We need to look at how force feeding is done industrially, along with industrial livestock farming as a whole.
I'm concerned about animal welfare, and I've turned my region into a place that is animal friendly. I work on animal welfare issues with charities, but France is France, and foie gras is France.
France is the top producer of foie gras in the world, and the vast majority of sales happen over the festive period.
It's not just the controversy affecting sales of foie gras. The industry has seen a number of challenges in recent years, from soaring production costs to the avian flu. Then came the pandemic, the largest and latest crisis to affect the industry.
The foie gras industry brought to its knees after several challenges have dented its total revenue. First, there was bird flu, which caused a 22% drop in production in 2021. In less than a year, France has recorded nearly 500 cases of infection, mainly in the southwest of the country. In an attempt to halt outbreaks of the disease, 3 million ducks have been slaughtered. Drastic preventative measures have also been introduced, like the poultry shelters put in place in this farm near the southwestern city of Toulouse.
In normal times, the ducks can run outside, like here, in front of you.
For this foie gras producer, it's a double whammy. To be able to shelter his ducks in good conditions, he has had to cut his flock by half.
It's a loss of earnings for the company and for the breeder, because on the one hand, you produce fewer animals, and on the other, structural costs remain the same. So in the end, you lose money.
Another challenge to add to the list, COVID-19. The closure of restaurants during the multiple lockdowns has caused foie gras sales to drop by 60% in France and abroad. A crisis that has been worsened by a rise in production costs.
As if that wasn't enough, since last autumn, the cost of raw materials has soared, with cereals at their most expensive level in years. Food represents a little over 60% of our total production costs, which is huge.
The foie gras industry is set to experience historically low levels of production this year, with numbers unseen since the spread of a deadly strain of bird flu 6 years ago.
The ethical objection to foie gras centers on the force feeding of ducks and geese. So is there a way to take that practice out of the equation? Several so-called ethical alternatives have emerged, including a vegan option known as foie gras. But they're up against two giant forces here in France, taste and tradition.
Their livers will soon be served up on customers' plates. Though these ducks and geese can at least have 5 months of life outside and a healthy diet. That's the goal of breeder and foie gras producer Olivier Storez, who with his wife has brought the savoir-faire from the southwest of France to Normandy.
I didn't want to breed in an industrial building because I think the animals are crammed together. Here you can see they can walk around, they can sit down in peace, so they have a good breeding life. We do our breeding without vaccines or antibiotics. If we had problems regarding the amount of space, that wouldn't work.
After the breeding stage, the birds are taken to the gavage room, where they are force-fed for 13 days with this machine, though Olivier says he tries to make the process as humane as possible.
At the beginning, they're obviously stressed. Some fly away in the first few days. We have to close the door because we find them outside. But I've been doing this for a few years, and you absolutely can't hurt them, because when an animal is hurt, it suffers, and that will lead to an infection, and then death. That's why in the industrial system there are cages. That way they're contained. I'm against this system. I don't think it's good.
Force feeding is being increasingly regarded as cruelty against animals. Some in the foie gras industry have developed alternative methods to fatten animals in a bid to reconciliate consumers with the product. A few years ago, this researcher discovered a technique while working on diabetes in humans, using bacteria which triggers fat storage.
Here we have an intestinal bacteria, which is injected in the birds at birth and leads to a spontaneous and natural development of a fatty liver.
An experimental farm in southwestern France was created to develop the method and move towards a more ethical production of foie gras. Another technique born in Spain is to give birds feed high in calories for 1 or 2 years. The result, a fatty enough liver without force feeding, though these products are not officially recognised as foie gras, which is defined by French law as the liver of a goose or duck fattened by a feeding tube. For animal rights activists, efforts to improve the fattening process of animals is merely glossing over what is, in their eyes, a cruel practice.
Whatever methods are used to make foie gras is essentially making the animal have a fatty liver, which means making them ill. You could do it in a worse way, but we're not going to say that there is or there isn't an acceptable method. In any case, foie gras brings up the question of legitimacy to make an animal suffer or to kill them in order to eat its organs.
A solution which involves no animal suffering is foie gras, a 100% vegan alternative which is meant to taste like the real thing. A way of staying true to the traditional French delicacy enjoyed during the festive season and sticking to one's moral convictions.
And that's it for this edition of France in Focus. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, I'm Annette Young, the host of the 51%, and this week's special edition we're coming to you from Spain, which is one of the world's top 15 countries in fighting gender discrimination. It's also a pioneer in the field of gender violence. So how did this once traditional Catholic society that spent decades under a dictatorship now become a global leader in equality? We're about to find out.
The 51%. Presented by Annette Young on France 24 and France24.com.